Here on Setting the Record Queer, we stand for electronic mail. Welcome to Setting the Record Queer, a podcast where queer people talk about the pursuits and communities they love. This is episode 14, and it's about satire journalism. My name is Alexis, my pronouns are it, its, or she, her, and I'm two of your hosts.
I'm your other host, my name's Kaylee, and my pronouns are she, her. And Alexis, I did a speedrunning marathon last week. I talked about it briefly.
You sure did. I made a lot of food runs for you.
You did! I appreciate it.
Anytime, babe.
I did a lot of hosting, restreaming, all that fun stuff. I talked about the marathon last episode. It finished. It was a lot of fun. It went super well. Hopefully by the time this airs, we'll have YouTube videos up of that stuff, but maybe not. It is a lot of work to get those organized. But yeah, I had a great time. I wound up doing an extra run because someone had to drop last minute.
It was a good time. I enjoyed waking up at like 7 in the morning to watch you play Odin's Sphere. I actually did. I like watching you play that game.
Now, something that you can go watch is that people paid like $300 to get 11 non-singers to all try to sing in sync some like Disney musical-esque JRPG theme. And oh my gosh,
it went swimmingly, as I'm sure you can imagine.
I'll put it in the show notes.
We're gonna put it in the show notes with no context. Just click this link. Like, just go full clickbait. You won't believe what's in this link.
Give it like a Reddit 50-50. Like, either this is a virus or like.
That was a good segue, but we're not done with the intro segment yet.
It's fine.
It's fine. Just segue. Do it
No,
now.
I still want to talk about things. Speaking of things, so a little bit after this episode goes live, I'm going to be heading across the country to California to participate in a speedrunning marathon called Calathon. I've mentioned this a little bit. I'm going to be racing NES Metroid. I'm going to win. It's going to be amazing. I'm really excited. And speaking of stuff that's happening live, we have a nice little announcement for you. For those of you who enjoyed our live episode at Awesome Games Done Quick 2019, we are doing another live episode as a panel at ToraCon in mid-March. We're going to be doing an anime roundtable panel. More details to follow. Keep an eye on our Twitter. Those details will probably already be there when you hear this episode, so like just check Twitter. We have some Artists Alley vendors and some competitive cosplay to talk about on the mic. It's going to be a great time.
I'm excited.
All right, now let's just retcon back to that really good segue and get going with the main form of the podcast.
This sure was an intro segment.
Wait, did we actually start?
Yes.
Oh, yo, what's up?
Hello. Yeah, so we have someone cool here today. I'm unbelievably excited for this topic, honestly. This is something I've wanted to do since the beginning. We say that at like every other episode.
Well, we have a big list.
We have a list of like over 60 people that we want to get on this podcast, and every single one of them is like, I want to talk to this person. But alas, we only do an episode every 2 weeks, so it's only going to take almost 3 years to get through that list. Anyways, today with us we have Quinn Brown, a writer for The Hard Times. Hi, Quinn. Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Quinn Brown. I use he, him pronouns. And I am a writer for the Hard Times websites and some other websites too. Mainly just the Hard Times. It's like the muy bueno stuff, you know?
I mean, I read a lot of your articles. They are indeed muy bueno.
Oh, thank you.
Why don't you tell us a bit about the Hard Times? What do you do over there? What kind of punching journalism?
So the kind of punching journalism, the stuff that is really the stuff that's just like cutting absolutely to the core of the journalism world is writing articles such as if gas prices really hit $3, they better taste better.
I remember that one.
Was so good.
Yeah, that's like my favorite. Just silly articles, mainly about punk music, because that is the slant of the Hard Times, and because I just like punk music. So, but yeah, just all sorts of satirical writing. Most of it is in news form. Some of it is in sort of that more like character monologue form. Yeah, just writing for them. I do work for other sites as well. I have done music reviews on occasion also. So yeah, writing writing of all kinds.
So that article you wrote about guy who couldn't tell whether metal review was good or bad, that was making fun of yourself then.
I would say in a sense, so I do consume a lot of music review content, and I just noticed that while a lot of people use these over the top words to describe it, especially because from the experience of doing music reviews, you don't want to be writing a review where you're saying amazing 15 times, so you kind of run out of words, and that's where people like Anthony Fantano will do this, where they'll be like, oh yeah, this new album is animalistic, disgusting, and unintelligible, and you're like, okay, are you complimenting the album or not? Because as a fan of all forms of music, I think that's cool, but most people are gonna be like, okay, great, why did he give it a 10 out of 10? So that was just one thing I thought that was kind of funny. That's a big part of satire is just even if a joke doesn't really make sense, just do it anyways if it's something you can observe, because there's a very obvious reason why metal reviewers use that aggressive tone of words, but hey, you can kind of make fun of it, so why not try to?
That's incredibly valid. And yeah, we'll dig in a little bit more to the technique in a bit. For now, let's talk about your background. What got you into writing and maybe then into satire, or did it start with satire? Just take us all the way back through the history of getting to where you are now.
So, I was conceived in a hotel. No, I'm kidding. I think just I don't know, in my family, I am definitely, being the gay one, the more creative one of the three boys, and so I always just kind of liked writing because I liked talking, but no one wants to listen to me talk until now, and so I thought I could just talk to paper instead, and so I started talking to paper, and I started telling really bad stories to the paper, and then eventually those became somewhat better stories, and then I got a writing award for best writer in the grade in 8th grade or something, and I let all of that power go to my head and try to become a writer. And given the fact that I'm on a podcast, I think it sort of worked out.
I mean, honestly, we've been super pumped for this episode for weeks.
Yeah.
When Matt tweeted, "Yes, we'll be on your podcast, DM me," I was just like, "Oh, baby." And then he linked us to you, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be so fun." And hey, you're already following through on that expectation, so thanks.
Yeah, you should have gotten Matt. I know I'm pretty sure he's just a straight cis person, so I don't know if he qualifies, but he's way better than I am. He's way funnier. Yeah, this is a regrettable episode, actually. I think we'll describe this whole thing when we're done and replace it. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, I have absolutely no regrets right now, so no regrets. Shoutouts to our tattooing episode last 2 weeks ago.
I don't think she spelled regrets wrong in any of her works, though.
She didn't in any of the ones she sent to us, so
she hid those because they were regrets.
They were truly regrettable.
Nice.
Anyways, tattooing is not the subject of this episode, so Kaylee, why don't we move on?
Yeah, so when did you join the Hard Times, and how did that process go?
So, joining the Hard Times was, I would say, the start of me really just beginning to do freelance writing. I was, for some reason, okay, as I mentioned before, I'm an absolute huge fan of Anthony Fantano, music critic. He does most of his reviews to YouTube. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's kind of the big music review guy now. And I was stalking his Twitter obsessively, as I do, and I noticed he tweeted out a article from the Hard Times that was called "New GarageBand Update Exports Songs Directly into Trash," and I thought at first I thought that was a real article, and it was some weird bug. So I clicked on it, I started reading, and I saw I began to learn that it was satire, and I thought, oh, this is really funny, music focused satire. And then I kept going through, and I saw it's punk music focused satire, and I'm a pretty big hardcore punk fan. So oh my, not to sound gay, but finding a community just of people who all both love humor writing and hardcore punk, that's pretty awesome. So I read the website, followed it very closely for a long time, and then I started thinking, I'm a halfway decent writer. I wonder if there's some way I can submit my own articles. And then it turns out that's how writing works for magazines, which I didn't know. And so I, found an email, and with the power of an incredible bluff and an email address that is somewhat professional looking, I ended up writing my first article for them, which is because of publishing technical difficulties, whatever stuff, it didn't get published till like months after I wrote it. So it's not like my first published, but the first article I ever wrote for them was called, there's something along the lines of Nardwuar surprises musician with recording of their own funeral, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with Nardwuar, but he's like another... Okay, Nardwuar's an absolute god. He's like a guy who is kind of known for, he does these interviews where like he will dig up really deep dirt on people to basically kind of shock them, and like he presents them with all of these vinyls of stuff like from their past. Like there's this one episode where he interviewed Lil Uzi Vert, and he got him like some Rob Zombie recording, and Lil Uzi Vert just freaked out and left the studio. He just like got in his car and ran away. So the dude digs deep, and like I don't know, like basically the joke of the article was just Nardwuar somehow finding a recording of like this person's funeral on vinyl, and I just laughed at my own joke. We will ignore that. But
I mean, honestly, now that I understand the context, it's pretty funny.
I mean, yeah, well, that's the thing that was really cool about the Hard Times is it's a lot of jokes that I think like a lot of people wouldn't get the context of. And if there's one thing I love doing, it's making jokes, even though I know no one else will laugh at them, because I will laugh at them, and that is good enough for me. So
that's incredibly valid. As a Twitch streamer, I feel that.
I mean, I feel like people are laughing at the jokes as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, enough people for the website to make a profit, hopefully. So, yeah. But, I mean, from there, I just... after I wrote that article, I got added to like their the Hard Times does a pitch group through like Facebook and stuff. And so once you prove yourself through the initiation process of writing your first article, you get like added to there, and then you can pitch headlines for stuff you want to write, and it's a really good community over there. I'd say in comparison to all the websites I've written for, which like admittedly is not super huge, it's like the most love like a community, you know? So yeah, Hard Times, they're cool. Shout outs to them. But yeah, from there I just kind of realized something I would like to impart on everyone here. The power of email is not to be overlooked. Like for my writing, I don't like to use any social media just because I don't really like social media, but like you can literally just email anyone. You can find anyone's email if you look hard enough. You could, and you know, from there you can just start emailing people like, hey, can I write for your website? I am certainly a professional person who does not have a Mark Zuckerberg screenshot as their Discord profile picture. And
you do have that.
Yeah.
That explains that. I was like trying to like discern the true nature of this very zoomed in picture of someone's face, and you know, that explains that.
His face is like edited to make him just look more alien like, but I don't know. I realized I needed a profile picture, so I just threw that in. But like, yeah, you can just email anyone and be like, hey, can I write for you guys? And sometimes they will be like, yeah, and sometimes they will be like, no response, which is very often. But you know what? Don't sweat it, because I don't know. Just like email's cool. Never, you know, like always believe in yourself, I guess, because other people will believe in you because they are dumb.
Other people will believe in you because they are dumb. Truly incredible advice.
I think we have gotten guests on the podcast from this exact method.
Oh, yeah, no, that is me. That's literally me. Matt texted me, he's like, hey, would you like to go on a podcast? And I'm like, Matt, why? I don't do anything. He's like, you're a writer. And I'm like, yeah, it's true.
I mean, not to say our guests are dumb, but like, we go out, we mess with this tiny podcast messes just like massive people. Like, we kind of middlemanned our way into getting Lena Rain on here.
Oh my god,
like...
yes, that was the episode I listened to in preparation because I was playing a ton of Celeste, and like...
Celeste is so good.
Holy god. Yeah, Lena Rain, what a musical genius.
Yeah.
Especially for, like, you know, just like doing the stuff she does with like video game soundtracks where she takes that like chiptune element, but she makes it like actual music. I don't know. She's just like total we stan. Yeah, Lena Rain good.
Love Lena Rain. I love Lena Rain, and I'm still not over the fact that I got to talk to her for like 2 hours.
So you mentioned that you have a bit of a background in writing. What's unique about writing satire?
The unique thing about writing satire is, with satire, like, if you want to become a legitimately good writer, I would say you have to learn a lot about, like writing theory, you know? Like, standard literature art stuff. You need to know, like, what makes good dialogue, what makes a good narrative, how can I use these literary devices, how can I use these rhetorical devices? And though, you know, there are, like, many very artful works of satire, like, you know, A Modest Proposal, Jonathan Swift.
I have read that. Whenever I think about writing satire, I think about just eating babies.
Which I also do, if we want to talk about that. I do eat children.
Fun fact, in 6th grade ethics class, I was taught that wasn't satire.
What?
They want, like, the teacher wanted to talk about it from an ethical perspective. And it's like, of course it's bad. You're talking about eating babies.
Yeah, but like, no, but like, as an example, like there's stuff like that where it's definitely boiled down to like an art form and used for a very serious purpose. But like in modern satire, which is consumed through like internet media, it's like its own set of rules. And it's kind of like when I'm writing an article, I don't worry too hard about like, did I use like metonymy here in a way that really enhances this character's arc? I just worry about like, no, did I find a way to say like a swear word in a funny way in this person's line? So like just the fact that satire is kind of like, it is the punkest form of writing. It's just about being like, it's giving the people what they want. Just give them something funny, something that'll stick with them, and then they'll enjoy themselves, and then they'll like it, and then you'll get the 0.0001 cent you get from click revenue in these trying times. And yeah.
I'm big into the notion that satire is the queerest form of writing, not gonna lie.
I can see that. I would say that's puns.
Puns are very queer. Well, I was gonna say that all of the best punsmiths that I know are queer, but that's not true, because the best punsmith I know is a wonderful ally, but he is in fact a straight man. We're talking about Komaru, of course.
Really? Because we had the best pun master on the planet on this podcast.
Wait, who is that?
Olive?
Yeah, no, never mind. My memory is terrible. Anyways, so yeah, you mentioned kind of like the rules of writing satire and how those have changed coming into the age of the internet and this new way that we consume that sort of media. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you write satire, what that thought process is, what sort of, writing tactics you're using, and like how how an article goes from a pitch, how it even becomes a pitch, and then how it goes from a pitch to an article.
So I'd say it's a mixture of like organic ideas that like sprout to me in everyday life, and me just like sitting in in front of my computer and being like, write something, please. So like the way that the write something please stuff usually goes is I will just take a topic and I'll try to dissect every angle of it and see if there's anywhere I can make fun of something. Like I believe like the metal review one was one of those ones where it was like organic. Like I was watching a metal review on YouTube and I thought of that idea. Like I just thought, why do they use these words? And then from there I thought, how can I take this observation that metal reviewers use violent words? How can I put that into a satirical format and B in like a news story format? And so those kinds, there are like 3 rules for satire. I don't know if I remember them all, which really speaks to my professionalism as a satire writer. But it is like incongruity, exaggeration, and reversal. So you take your observation, which like, for example, metalhead reviewers, they use aggressive words. And then you think, if I were to take that observation, how can I portray that observation like to its extreme? Because extremity is funny. That's terrible wording. But like putting things to their extreme enhances the humor. So I think, there's the straightforward observational angle, which I think the metalhead reviewer one falls under more, or like, let me like pull up my author page actually, because I need examples of what I'm talking about. I just don't remember what I've written.
Yeah, be sure to check out all of Quinn's articles in the show notes.
Oh my God, don't check them out. They're bad. No, read something better.
It's too late. Our listeners are already clicking on your articles as we speak. They're reading, they're laughing.
We have distributed them to our network of fans across the country. Your IP address is ours, sucker.
Okay, here's a good example of one of the techniques. All right, I will start my lecture now. So for this one, this is an opinion piece, which is more in the character monologue format. So this says, separate art from the artist. My music sucks, but I'm pretty chill. And so what I wanted to go for...
That's really good.
Yeah, what I was trying to go for there is like, we have these discussions of like separate art from the artist a lot, especially like I'm a big fan of Led Zeppelin and like those claims all the time from their fans, like separate art from the artist. Like they were bad people, but they made great music. And so I thought, what if I take one of my rules of satire and apply it to that concept, which, like we could debate if that's a legitimate thing for hours, but obviously you can point out, even if that concept is solid or not, separating art from the artist, like if you reverse that, it's pretty dumb sounding. And so you can write an article about if someone believed in the reversal of that concept, that would be very dumb and therefore very funny, because dumb things are funny. Case in point, my articles. So from there, it's about finding ways to just kind of repeat that same formula. I think mostly applies to internet-based satire. Repeating that same formula you used to come up with the headline to come up with like the supplementary paragraphs you will use. So once I have that, I'm like, okay, what is one thing that an artist does to enhance their personality? They do an interview. So I'm like, in the article, I'll say something like, despite my ska trap album receiving a 0 out of 10 from Pitchfork, I was really great on Mark Maron's WTF podcast, and it's unfair that the industry shuns me based on my musical talent alone. And from there, like that's like one sting in like an article, and if you get like 3 of those, then you're fine. So that's kind of how writing an article works, is just taking a concept that can be a totally legitimate concept or something totally stupid that you want to make fun of, and just like tweaking it in a way that makes it just become this extreme, grotesque idea that like no one in their right mind would support in a way, or like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I do know. I know now because you told me. Incredible. This podcast is a learning experience every 2 weeks, and I love it for that.
Yeah.
That sounded sarcastic. It wasn't. So what sort of role does like the hard times serve in your life? You mentioned the community a little bit, and you've mentioned having a very, very big focus on it. Is it like a full-time job? Or if not, like what other kinds of things do you do?
So it's really just a hobby. Writing in general is a hobby for me. So like the hard times in particular is like where I'm most eager to write for, is because, as I said before, like most of my ideas are about music because I just think about music a lot. Music is kind of like my other big hobby, I would say, but like that's not what we're here to talk about. So yeah, the hard times is like the way that they do things. They're very focused on like not only creating great articles, which they do at a very successful rate, but also making sure that they're building their brand as a whole. And I think that they do a good job of sourcing the people in the hard times to help do that. And so especially the way there's like a Facebook group that all the writers and editors and picture makers, photographers, that's a picture maker. All of those people are in, and they can communicate, and that's where headlines are pitched. Like people will post a headline, and then if the headline someone DMs you and is like, your headline's good, here's money for it, make it an article. And then they make it an article, and then they have the money for it. And, just there's like, that aspect of being able to like someone's pitch, and that like showing up, places that do like pitch groups, as they're called, adds a sense of community, because, then also every now and then someone posts in like, I don't know, like a meme about Glenn Danzig or something. And then we're all like, oh, that's funny. And then like everyone comments like, wow, that is really funny. Yes. Haha. Here's a funny thing to say about this funny thing, because we're all humor writers. And, like it just becomes kind of a nice experience to comment on similar things. Or sometimes people will post like a news article about like that might mention the hard times or something, and then people will comment like making fun of it. And just interactions like that, and actually seeing people like and like upvote your posts or whatever is I would say brings the hard times closer together as a whole. And I know other sites do similar things, but I don't know if they do them as effectively as the hard times.
Okay, quick sidebar. I never even thought about the fact that satire writing photography has to be a very serious thing.
Oh.
Can you tell me more about that really quick before we get back on track?
Okay, so I am not employed to like take photos for my articles. Every now and then they will ask for like volunteers for photo to like help stage a photo. And like I signed up to do that once, and then I realized I need 5 people for this, and I don't have 5 friends. So I decided not to do that. But like the photos are a mixture of like really good editing of stock photos and then occasional live modeling, which I have to imagine is a very stressful process, because like there are some articles, like I remember there was one that got picked up, and like people were just waiting on a photo for it for like months. That was rockabilly bassist Land's first ever kickflip. And so getting a picture of someone kickflipping on a giant like orchestral bass is pretty hard to will into existence. So yeah, satire writing photography, I have the utmost respect for the people who are tasked with creating photos for my stupid articles, because that is just, I can't even use like Google Drawings to create like a school project half the time. I mean like Lord Photoshop, and like creating these ridiculous photos to match these ridiculous articles, and to draw people in as well, because you want a flashy photo that will, attract people to the link, like clickbait, just, yeah, that's definitely an art form on its own. That's the next person you should have on, satire writing photographer.
Yeah, I was about to say, any of Quinn's coworkers, if you're queer and do the photography stuff, please talk to us. That is another thing we would absolutely love to discuss.
You can be on the podcast in like 6 months because we accidentally booked like half a year of guests. Oops.
Yeah. I made a Twitter post being like, hey, I'd like to get a few more guests on our list. And we ended up getting like well over 40 people and booked ourselves out until like late July. And then Kayla and I were like, you know what? That was kind of a mistake.
They're all cool people though.
Oh my God, we have so many good episodes coming up. Just y'all wait. Just y'all wait. This podcast is going places. And that place is in the same direction it's been going since last July.
We can talk about those during their own appropriate episodes though. So, how would you say being queer in the whole satire community is?
I would actually say it's not a huge obstacle. I think that luckily the writing community is like, it's very accepting, you know, like sort of, I think creative communities in general tend to be pretty accepting. I could be sorely mistaken in that, but luckily, you know, the people of the hard times are very supportive. I've never encountered any hatred for anything I've written that has to do with queerness, or like hatred for being queer and writing things. I would say outside of the writing community, like obviously being gay affects stuff, you know, that's like a no-brainer, but luckily the people at the hard times are very supportive. People at all the websites I've written for are very supportive. And I'd say that it is kind of one thing I like to do as a writer is just trying to increase representation. I guess like I will try to, you know, if I can, I will try to write a gay couple into my stories, or, you know, like I'll try to write someone who's like non-binary, like I'll use they them pronouns for someone in an article. You know, just like little things like that I try to do, and so far no one's ever been like, oh, you used a gay person in this article, that's dumb, and like commented on it. So like, I don't know, I think luckily it's a very accepting community for writing. I know other friends of mine don't have such luck, and I've you know, my heart goes out to them. Like a friend of mine just wrote an article about LGBTQ rights, and she's since received like hate mail for it. You know, it's a nasty world out there, but luckily, I mean, like most of the hatred I'm getting is for like, what, like you said Minor Threat was a good punk band when like Bad Brains was a way better example. I'm like, great, I don't care. And of course the occasional biting the onion of people not understanding it's satire. I have a great example of that is not related to queerness at all, but
I want to hear it anyway.
Okay, so one of the articles that was the most challenging to write due to autocorrect was 5 grammar mistakes you're probably unaware of. That is a possessive you're. And it was going to be a like listicle that was helping people with their grammar, except all of the mistakes were horribly misguided. Like there with an like EI is feminine and there with an ER is masculine. Or like whom is formal and who is informal, and just like stuff like that, just really bad grammar advice. And so of course throughout the article I littered it with like terrible grammar, and like there's an emoji in there somewhere, and it's a mess to look at. And someone like, so it got posted to the Hard Times Instagram, and someone comments on it like, nice try writing a grammar article when your headline doesn't even have proper grammar, LOL. And I was like, oh, whoa. I left a response comment to it that says, oh my gosh, it would be really funny if they wrote a whole article pretending to give grammar advice, but it was in fact very bad. And I never got a response on that, but...
Fantastic. Yeah, people on the internet they certainly exist. I will say that much with confidence. Mm-hmm. So backing up a little bit, you mentioned kind of like satire and queerness and, you know, pushing representation and normalization. If you have any more thoughts on like kind of the relationship between satire and activism, we'd love to hear them, because I feel like there's a lot there.
Right. So I am like just a bad activist. I don't know a lot about politics and stuff, but satire and activism is definitely intertwined, and the satire writing I tend to do does not really touch on that, but there are places I've written for that are a lot more focused towards that, or places I've tried to write for who have rejected me that are a lot more focused on that. Curse you, McSweeney's internet tendency. But I think that satire is a very powerful activism tool, and one thing just as a writer that I would, you know, want to improve on is using that tool effectively. And I think in some articles I have done that for the queer community, not in like a revolutionary way, but I've definitely at least touched on those issues. And the thing with satire is that the theoretical definition of satire is that it is inspiring change in society. But like, you can't tell me that like Saturday Night Live's skits where like people bounce their heads to Eurodance music is like inspiring change in society, even though that is like a satirical show. So, whether or not the change that my articles supposedly inspire in society are relevant or relevant to the queer community is its own thing. But definitely, as a writer, I think that satire is a useful tool because even through like political divides, like I think for a lot of people, if something is funny, like it's funny no matter if they disagree with it. And yeah, I think that humor is a good bridging tool towards new ideas, and that's one thing where even like simply like normalizing it through the stuff I mentioned before can maybe draw people to be more accepting. Hopefully, I feel like I'm just complimenting myself way too much here. I'm like some hero, but no, yeah. Satire good. That's what I'll say.
You heard it here You heard
it here first. I could have let you say that, but I didn't.
Yeah, I'm just moving on. I'm just moving on. And by I'm just moving on, I mean you're just moving on, because go ahead, next question.
Are there any events going on in the greater satire communities, I guess? Do you have, like, specific events?
Yes, so on March 7th, Satire 2 will be released. No, I'm kidding. In terms of events, there's, the thing about freelance writing is, like, because freelance writing, by the way, is like, how I do satire, which is basically sitting at home and then you sell like one article or one piece of writing to a company and then they publish that, as opposed to like working a desk job at one certain company. And, most satire is done through freelance to my knowledge because it's an easy and cheap way to get the writing. So like, events are kind of hard to come by. I know the Hard Times in particular is having events all the time. They will host hardcore punk shows that look pretty great according to their Instagram stories, but DC doesn't get any love anymore. But there's always workshops that are happening. Like, is this the kind of events you're talking about, by the way? Like literal events or?
Literally anything.
Yeah, okay, because I just realized it might be like greater sea changes. I don't know, but like,
I mean, just like what happens in the community,
yeah.
Is there something that brings people together to do stuff together, or just like, is there something you look forward to on the calendar related to satire?
Definitely just like every time something in the news happens that is really easy to just write about is, I would say, when the whole community bonds together, because like you will see like, what is the most recent dumb thing that happened that like especially for the Hard Drive, which is like the Hard Times gaming subset, like oftentimes if a new...
I love Hard Drive so much.
Yes, I have not been published there yet, but I have an article in the works coming out for them soon. I am excited. I will not spoil it because I don't know if I can. But like, people will post something like, oh, like Red Dead 2 just fired a bunch of their developers, make fun of it. And so those are kind of the moments in the satire community where I think you can kind of feel everyone living for, because there's a race to like, who can make this joke first, or like, who can make this joke but better. And just like those moments in media where something so colossally dumb happens and everyone feels the need to write an article about it is really when it feels cool to kind of be a part of that community, because it's, I mean, as I said, like satire is this bridging thing, and one way that it bridges is, of course, when everyone agrees something is dumb, getting everyone together to write about the dumb thing is like very good.
What kind of relationship does like the satire writing body have with events like NaNoWriMo? Is there anything there?
Wait, hold on, NaNoWriMo?
National Novel Writing Month.
Oh, well, yeah, that's where I would say, like satire writing that I do, there tends to be usually a disconnect from the writer and the editor. With Hard Times, that's one of the sites where that is just not apparent at all. Like there's a very big sense of transparency and being interconnected. Everyone knows everyone. But like a lot of places, you just kind of write your article and give it to them. So there's not a whole lot of encouragement, towards like, oh, hey, we should get all of our writers to like go to this, this one like writing workshop or whatever. But, I would say that if you were to take like, there are obviously like big events where, satire writers can, flex their satirical muscles and stuff. Like, I don't know. I think that freelance writing work in general it's not in super communal. Like obviously there are people who know each other and, they'll, refer people like, oh, hey, you should write for here, or like, oh, hey, here's this editor's email. But, in general, I would say that since it's internet-based, not a whole lot happens.
Valid. That's valid. I don't have a comment on that. You're valid. Slam stamp. Valid. Pass it down the conveyor belt. Everyone's valid. Welcome to the Validity Machine Factory.
Nice.
Anyway, what tips do you have for someone who's looking to get started in satire or in freelance writing, or really anything else that you would claim an expertise in?
Right. So, as I mentioned earlier, use the power of email to your advantage. Just do a little bit of Google searching. You can probably find the name of someone in charge of something you want to write for, and then you just send them an email saying, I want to write for you. Here's some sample work. Maybe if you go scroll through the website, they'll have a page where it details you how should you submit writing here. Just, don't be afraid, even if you're not the most qualified person in the world, to just act like you are and send out an email to a business as if it's like a normal thing you do, when it probably isn't. And also, Lena Raine said this in one of your episodes, like, if you don't have anywhere to write for, then just write. Like, don't wait for an opportunity to come to you. Make your own opportunities. Like, just write your own stuff for fun, right? Like, don't focus on like, where am I going to send this idea? Sometimes you just make an idea and you're just like, it's my idea. I'm going to keep it and not share it ever with anyone.
So what upcoming projects can we expect from you?
Stuff that is just still waiting to be published. The editing process can be quite long. Hard drive article coming out soon that I am very excited for. A little bit of stuff for Flex magazine, which I would say is they're kind of like the Hard Times, but for hip hop, more focused towards like that genre, which is great because like I love some good rap music. I think I have one more thing in the works for Points in Case, which does a lot of stuff with the Second City. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. That's where like Amy Poehler went. I don't know, something with her. I could be totally wrong on that. But yeah, just more articles coming out. Yeah, that's it.
That is exactly what I'd want from you. So like, great, thanks. I look forward to reading them because they're funny.
Thank you.
So, anyways, speaking of things that you've written, let's get into the next segment of our podcast, the Performance Showcase. So, what's going to happen here is we are going to read one of your articles. You get me here for free to make an audiobook version of your article. You should be incredibly grateful.
No, I'll pay you like $5,000 commission. No, I'm kidding.
Thanks.
Please do not hold me to that. Oh, my lord.
Yeah, you're not getting a discount. Why do you think you get a free discount just for being on the podcast?
Real talk, I would love to do audiobooks. That sounds super fun. Anyways, yeah, let's read this article, and then we're going to talk through like the techniques and stuff that you use to write it. It's going to be a great time. This article's hilarious, so I'm very excited. So, this article is called Venue Opens Gender-Neutral Bathroom on Neighbor's Fence. Philadelphia. Management at the Dust Bucket DIY venue proudly announced yesterday the opening of a new gender-neutral spot on the property's neighboring fence for all patrons to relieve themselves, according to a post on their Facebook page. The Dust Bucket has always stood for tolerance and acceptance, the post read. For over 30 years, people of all genders and sexualities have attended our shows, and we'd like to make sure they can continue to do so. Starting today, the patch of the fence by the condos next door is now open for the use of those who do not feel comfortable in a binary gendered restroom. LGBTQ scene members expressed gratitude for the venue's courageous move to enable trans, non-binary, and otherwise non-cisgendered patrons to use the bathroom directly on the wooden fence separating the venue from a small 3-story condominium. I've always felt out of place in the male bathrooms there, said trans woman Cherie Benson, not just because it's a reminder of my birth-assigned gender I was forced to conform to for so many years of my life, but also it really smells. The fence is the ideal spot for anyone trying to pop a quick piss without judgment. The move is in response to a campaign led by many LGBTQ resource centers and support groups in the area. We are proud that our initiative to empower and support people of all genders is slowly but surely making a difference, said non-binary punk and president of the Philadelphia GSA, Ari Bonowitz. We are confident that the Dust Bucket's decision to allow people like me to use the bathroom on that fence is a step that we can all support. We still need toilet paper out there, but it's a step in the right direction. Ben Smithson, the property manager of the condo, had some opinions on the new fence waste disposal sod as well. Look, I'm non-binary too, okay? I support the rights of the LGBTQ, but why my fence? We already had to replace half of it last year when some idiot backed their van into it and knocked it over, said Smithson. Now the venue is encouraging everyone to piss all over the thing? There are a series of bushes 20 feet away that'd be perfect to piss in. The Dust Bucket's gender-neutral spot has been marked with a rainbow rainbow-colored safe space sign, which has also been urinated on. You know, when we started this podcast, I didn't expect to send a chunk of an episode talking about urine this much, but like, hey, we're dealing with it. It's fine.
Oh, but it's so funny, though.
Thank you.
It's a really good article.
Thanks.
I love the twist at the end.
Yeah, the twist at the end is really good. So, let's kind of back up to earlier in the episode when you talked about sort of the principles of satire that you employ when writing an article. So you mentioned incongruity, exaggeration, and reversal. How did those techniques come to life in this article?
So, this is one of the ones where I kind of, I guess I would say it's more under the incongruity category because I took two concepts and mushed them together. The concept being that, you know, people are disgusting and will urinate in public, especially people at punk shows. And then also gender neutral bathrooms existing. And obviously there's something ridiculous to like having a gender neutral fence bathroom. So from there, I just came up with a funny concept, like almost like something I would mention in a conversation, like what if there was a gender neutral bathroom on a fence, and just tried to explore how would that work out in the real world and just see if I could create a miniature arc from that. I mean, yeah, that's just kind of what I did there, and like trying to pepper in as many jokes to like end every paragraph as possible. Like the pop a quick piss thing was added in the editing process by Matt, which is like the funniest part of the whole article. So yeah, congrats to him again. I'm just like standing Matt Sancombe this whole time, but whatever. And yeah, just, you know, trying to draw upon things I know from like being gay. Like, okay, whenever I see those safe space signs, I get like weirdly hype, even though I'm like completely cisgendered and like there's no reason for me to be excited about them, but I just see a gay flag and I'm like, yes. I don't know if that's just me. That could just be me, but
I mean, representation matters.
yeah, exactly.
It's really important. This comes up on the podcast all the time. And yeah, seeing queer flags is just like, it's the best feeling. It's like, these are my people. And it's also like, I'm not going to get murdered here.
Yeah.
Cool. Trying to like poke through this. If there are any like specific sentences, specific paragraphs that you want to dive into, like what sort of writing techniques went into them, feel free. We'd love to hear about them. Like what sort of takes this from an idea to a whole article?
So one thing, I guess like almost world building for these satirical articles is very important, and definitely coming up with names for venues, bands, and people is like part of that. I spent a long time searching to see if the Dust Bucket was already an existing venue because it just popped into my head and I was like, I feel like that exists. But after some like sufficient Google Maps research, I am pretty sure I'm the first person to call a venue the Dust Bucket. But yeah, coming up with gender neutral names and stuff is something that I had fun with because, you know, I don't know a whole lot of gender neutral names off the top of my head, but I wanted to make sure that the article was like, you know, somewhat accurate to the names people would use. So like trying to find, I hope I did a good job of that. I don't know.
Both of us are binary,
Yeah.
so I don't think we can fairly comment.
Hey,
but
someone will comment. There
seemed
will
fine.
always be someone to comment on the internet.
There will always be comments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so specific question. We talked a little bit about like the twist at the end. Where did the idea for that come from? Like how did that come to be? Because it's absolutely hilarious.
I think just like sort of having, eventually you're gonna run out of observations for like a certain type of character in an article to make. Like I can only have so many members of the venue speak, and like I already do that sort of with two people spoke for the bathroom, and so I thought like, okay, someone should speak against the bathroom, and who should that be? The property manager, probably, because he doesn't want his vents being used as a toilet. And so I just thought like, I mean, it was just one of those spontaneous ideas. And it could also just partially be me stemming from me subconsciously making people queer, like not in real life, in articles.
I mean, I do that in real life, so.
Yeah.
Shh, don't give away the secrets. Oh no, my binder full of queer agenda is flying all over the place. They're gonna find out now.
Oh no! It's a good thing this is an audio podcast and no one can see these webcams.
Oh no, my text-to-speech reader!
The fluoride is leaking. All of the chemicals, the gay bomb that I use. I don't know.
Okay, any final thoughts on the article? I mean, honestly, I feel like it really speaks for itself, so.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like internet satire, you don't really have to go too deep into in forms of like literary analysis, which is a shame because I love me some good literary analysis. But no, I think, you know, the article was funny enough to get published and get a few thousand likes on Instagram. So, hey, if it did that, then who cares what's in it?
I mean, yes, but also, like, it had queer activism in it, which is cool.
Yes.
That's a good thing.
Yes, that too. Definitely, being able to, create something funny that also involves queer people is always a win. Unless it is, of course, like tearing them down, which is not a win. But something like this, which I think is generally positive, not hateful in any way, that's nice to see.
Yeah. Supporting people, good.
Mm-hmm.
Supporting people for not supporting other people, bad, but supporting people, good.
I would agree. I would say good to that.
Listener questions. Let's do listener questions.
Yeah, let's move on to our listener questions. So for every episode of this podcast, we take questions from you, our listeners, for our guests and for us. If you have questions for any of our future episodes, you can send them to us via Twitter at strqueercast, via email settingtherecordqueer@gmail.com, or in our Setting the Record Queer community Discord at bit.ly/strqcord in all lowercase letters. Our first question this week comes from Alex J in Discord. Have you ever started to write an article, but then whatever you were writing actually happened? What would you do with the article if so?
I don't think so. I know that there have been times when other people have. I think if anything that I wrote happened to be real, I would shift my interest in life and then claim to be like a future fortune teller person and just make money off that. Because like that's that's a skill in its own right, I guess.
Would you say it makes it better or worse satire if it comes true?
I would say the joke is probably less effective like 100 or so years down the line because it'll just seem like an actual informative piece of writing. But at the same time, I think if good satire is supposed to observe change in society, and so you take a ridiculous example of something so you can say, don't let this ridiculous example thing happen, and then it happens, well then like, it's just basically saying, hey guys, I'm right. Like, I was correct. So, yeah.
All right, our next question comes from M, also in Discord. Do you have to do research for your articles? If so, what's your favorite topic that you have researched?
Oh my god, yes. I think the greatest thing I have ever Googled has been, what does gasoline taste like? That is for the gasoline drinking article. For those of you who would like to know, it tastes very acidic, like batteries, which begs the question, Quora user, why do you know what batteries taste like? So there's someone out there who has ingested both gasoline and batteries, and I have $15 that they helped get me. So yeah, shout out to you, Quora user, who gave me that answer. Researching for articles can be kind of stressful because a very common scenario is I pitch an idea where I know a baseline enough to make fun of it and then not enough to write an article about it. Like the one I'm doing for Hard Drive, I talk about MatPat, like the game theory guy, and I realized like I have seen one game theory YouTube video in my entire life, and that was why I texted my friends. I said, "Tell me how MatPat speaks, and I will use that." And so they gave me some helpful information. But I have seen why I gave the Pope a copy of Undertale because that is the funniest video unintentionally. But yeah, researching for articles is always a fun time. There have been times where I have successfully pitched an article and then just ended up not writing it because I just didn't know enough about it. Like, there's a website that just started. It's called the Broadway Beat. It's Broadway musical satire. So like cliche gay thing and satire sounds like me. And I pitched like an article about a chorus line and then they were like, yeah, great, you should write that. And then I was like, wait, I've never seen a chorus line. And so I was just like, yeah, like I'm not gonna be able to write this. Like give this headline to someone else, tell them to write it. Like they will do a better job. But yeah, researching can be fun. It can be kind of hard. Luckily, I usually get to write about stuff that I know a lot about. Like an article that I just pitched to Points in Case is all just about like music. So I had a fun time with that one because, as I mentioned, like I'm super into that. So yeah, it's cool.
I agree. It is cool. I am hip with the teenagers. I am so with it and lit or whatever. I am like probably at least as lit as Sluggo. Shoutouts to Nancy. Good comic. Anyways, and our final question this week comes from Emilia in Discord. How do you decide when a topic is too real or too soon to write satire about? How do you approach the question of what can and can't be joked about?
The question said #too real.
Yeah, and the Alexis did it.
Well, the Alexis
okay,
should have.
Deal with it.
Respect our listeners.
Yes, I'm a terrible person, and I just don't approach that question a lot, and people will call me out for it, thankfully. I think I just try to pitch whatever's funny, and if people react harshly to it, if they think it's something I shouldn't joke about, then I'm thankful for that critique, and then I will not joke about it. So yeah, that's the system that I'm going with, which is probably a flawed one, but hey, it's the best I can do as of now. Because I'm just like bad at reading people, so yeah.
I think I've said this word enough times this podcast, but valid. Kaylee, why don't we move on?
I think it's time we move on to our final segment, which is, of course, Kaylee's question of the week. Now, this is, the sort of question that you would find maybe in, maybe you would get your, Laffy Taffy or your popsicle stick, and it would be the, the question, and then you would, eat your popsicle stick or your Laffy Taffy, and, oh, there's the answer that you would have given, and that's the sort of question that we go for in this segment. And this question of the week is, what satire article do you wish was real?
Okay, I came up with this question, and I'm proud of it, and I just want to make a note. This is in fact Alexis's question of the week, so you better appreciate it.
I will serve as your witness in court. If copyright does become an issue for whose question of the week this truly is. Perhaps.
I mean, given that we're going to be married within like a year, legally speaking, I don't think that's a super meaningful question, but
I think I've done 12 of the 14.
Kaylee, would you like to start us off?
Sure, I'll start us off. Any given one of those, right-wing satire articles that are like, oh, the gay agenda, watch out, and I'm like, yes. Just that. Yeah, we want to turn your kids gay or whatever. I'm in.
Sounds gay. I'm in. The eternal mood. My answer is actually kind of similar, but there's one specific article from The Onion that comes to mind, which was school bully harasses other students using their preferred pronouns. And I wish that was real, because I feel like that's at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that is, I would say.
Like, it would be an improvement. My second pick is that one, my eternal favorite Onion article, modern day Caligula orders everything bagel. And I just want to see how that would play out more literally.
I mean, that does happen all the time. I had an everything bagel this morning.
Yeah, but you're not literally a modern day Caligula.
But what if we were to amend that to just Caligula?
Oh my god, he's alive?
Roman Emperor Caligula comes back from the dead, orders everything bagel.
He would appoint the bagel to his consul.
Why are we talking about what he ordered? He's alive. He's like 3,000 years old.
And he's also a horrible, horrible person.
Well, I mean, the people we have in office now, how bad can Caligula be? No, I kid, of course.
I mean, you've got a point.
Caligula is pretty bad. I mean, like, we haven't waged war on the sea yet. If we wage war on the sea, then Caligula 2020. I'm all for it.
It's the Calig you love.
Yes. I mean, the Calig you love is more evidence that puns are just gay property. We just own them. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. The pun was invented by Olive Brinker in 2017. You can't tell me I'm wrong.
I can. I have proof.
No, you can't. Quinn, what would be your pick for a satire article you wish was real?
I guess hopefully none of them become real, because as I've said before, satire is often supposed to portray something not good, and you're supposed to agree that it's not good. Going back to a modest proposal, I think that purely in an isolated situation, to see the policies mentioned in a modest proposal play out would be absolutely horrible, but fascinating. That is just, no one will speak to me at this point, probably. But I mean, I have a friend he's kind of known for his very authoritarian political opinions. On that political compass test, he's higher up than most World War II dictators. So we've debated if a modest proposal is valid for a long time, and he says that it would work, and I say that's terrible, but I think seeing it not work would finally make me win that argument. So
fair enough.
That's a modest proposal. I want to become real. No, oh god, no, that's not what I meant.
Just gonna take that out of context.
Yes, that's what I was very nervous I would just get absolutely canceled before this, but yeah. I don't know, just one of those all-time greats of satire, like being played out in like an experimental way would be cool.
It certainly would be interesting. All right. Well, I think that's just about everything. My face hurts from laughing, so I'm going to start wrapping things up now. Thank you so much for listening to this. Quinn, thank you so much for being on. This was absolutely hilarious. Where can people find you and find your articles? I know you said you don't really social media, so like if you don't really have anything to link, that's all right. But whatever you want to share.
Yeah, I guess email me if you want me to do anything for you, probably writing related, but like also anything that work. Check out the Hard Times, check out the Hard Times podcast, which just started. Not to introduce rivalry into the podcast game, but
I mean, honestly, I feel like they're more famous than us already, so it's
I mean, you guys had Lena Raine, and they've only had like irrelevant people from Minor Threat who are like not even Ian McKay. So yeah, who cares? I think that's a win for STR.
People can listen to multiple podcasts. I don't know if people are aware of this, but people can listen
No,
to
they
2
can't.
podcasts.
You better only listen to our podcast exclusively. That way you'll never figure out that there are other podcasts that are better than us.
You mean like in the first episode where we answered I'm pretty sure in episode 0 we answered a question about what podcasts we recommend.
Nonsense. It was what podcast, singular.
And it was this one.
That reminds me of like there's some story on the internet about a guy who like has only played one video game his entire life. And like his friends will be like, "Hey, you should play this like you should play Dark Souls. It's really good." And he's like, "Oh, no, thanks. I already play a video game."
That's incredible.
Yeah, like you just do that for podcasts. Like, hey, you should listen to this podcast. Like, "Oh no, I have one and I'm ride or die." STR Queercast for the life. But
I mean, mood.
Better not see you on another podcast.
Anyways, what is your email address?
it's quite lengthy. It is Quinn Brown 2003 at gmail.com.
Yeah, we'll put the spelling in the show notes. Yeah. So if you enjoyed this podcast, you might consider supporting us on Patreon. So our patrons can get early guest reveals, access to a special patrons only Discord channel, high quality or early episode releases, and even maybe special thanks on the podcast. We'd like to offer a special shout out to our $25 patron, Kadeho, who you can find on Twitter as @CallMeKadeho. That's call me CADEJO. Thank you so much, Kadeho. Your support is like incredibly appreciated. Besides Patreon, if you like this podcast, subscribe to it on whatever your podcast app is. Please leave us a review. Tell a friend about us. Recommend us on your social media. You can find us on the internet as on Twitter @STRQueercast, via email settingtherecordqueer@gmail.com, and you can come join our Setting the Record Queer community Discord, where you can hang out with some of the other listeners, your hosts, and even some of the guests who have decided to grace us with their presence at bit.ly/strqcord. While you're there, feel free to ask questions of us or our guests, give us feedback. If you have a cool idea for who or what could be on this podcast, or maybe you think you'd be a good fit for this podcast, feel free to share with us. We are always looking for new ideas. The logo for this podcast was drawn by Cubotic. That's @QBTIC on Twitter, or Cobot, QOBOT.tumblr.com. Our theme music was written by Thrill Me Music, and you can find more information about her work at thrillmemusic.squarespace.com. This podcast was edited by Kaylee and produced by yours truly, Alexis. Kaylee, where can our listeners find you?
People can find me on Twitter at WitchesHex, that's WITCHS Hex, or on Twitch at the same name, but with an underscore between Witches and Hex.
And you can find me on Twitch and YouTube as Proto Magical Girl, or Twitch at proto.ml, and on Twitter and Instagram as Princess Proto. Our next episode is going to be on video game animation with Aura, aka Mumanive, which is going to be so much fun. Thank you for listening. This has been another very fun episode of Setting the Record Queer. Thank you so much, Quinn, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
You can like read aloud the like red, green, blue code to create images like with a voiceover under the podcast. Like you will have me talking about the article and like someone is just going like RRRRRGRRRRGBBB, and they're just like, if you put that together in your head, it makes like the Hard Times logo.
At 60 frames per second.
Yes. No, 120. Only top tier. Only so fast that it becomes impractical for any form of entertainment.
I mean, the human eye can only see at 30 FPS according to weird people on the internet, so like...